What do we really know about mushrooms? Mushrooms are the fruiting body of fungi. There's 11,000 named species of fungi in North America, and that's just the macrofungi, which can be seen with the naked eye. To put that in perspective, there's only 200 species of birds and just shy of 1,000 mammals in North America. The kingdom fungi is a large and diverse group of organisms estimated to comprise between 1.5 million and 7.1 million species. Today, we're going to learn about 4 of those species cultivated by a company called WisEats mushrooms. We'll meet Sherry, the facility manager there, a horticulturalist by trade. It was a wonderful tour. I can't thank you enough, you and your team. So without further ado, let's get into it.
All right, so I'm Sherry from WisEats Mushrooms. From WisEats Mushrooms, and I'm the facility manager here. Been on site here for 14 months.
Okay.
14 months.
Awesome.
Started in Strathmore.
Yeah.
Did a little bit of a test structure.
Okay.
And then we knew that we were going to move into here, so we were just trying to grow a company and do it that way. So, and it's growing.
Absolutely.
We're still one big company. In Strathmore is where we do our block production.
Okay.
So a block is what the mushrooms are growing in.
Sure.
So it's made out of a hardwood structure, hardwood pellets actually, that's mixed with soybean hull. And the soybean hull helps with nutrition. So the reason why we do that is because we're trying to make nature. So the types of mushrooms that we grow oyster mushrooms and we grow Lionsmane. They grow in the wild on dead decaying wood, so hardwood. Whereas other mushrooms would potentially grow where you see from the ground, or the compost type idea, but these mushrooms don't. They'll grow on the side of the tree. The tree is fallen, it's decaying, they'll grow on the side of that. So we're actually trying to trick them into thinking that's what they are by what they're growing on and the environment they're growing in.
Yep.
So that all gets into a hopper. Those little hardwood pellets, looks like a smoker. Goes into a hopper, push a pedal, you get the exact amount each time. You'll have a percentage of water that shoots into that as well. You take those blocks and they put them in a house. 24 hours approximately. I believe it's high temperature, like 275 or something like that. The reason being is because we're growing fungus and we don't want anything to compete with what we're growing with. So it kills everything, all the bacteria and all that stuff. They do that, they let them cool, and then they put them into a lab, which is called the inoculation stage. So inoculation is when they inoculate that substrate with what we use a grain spawn. We use multiple different types of inoculations, like a liquid spawn, but we use a grain spawn. And what that means is the actual mushroom spawn that we are actually now making on our own, but we also buy from a company in Maine. They inoculate these bags of grain with a mushroom spawn. It myceliates on the grain. They use that grain as a vessel. That's the only purpose for it. We put it in bags, put it in, shake it up, and then it goes to another stage called incubation. 2 weeks approximately. And that's at a temperature of about 24 Celsius. Once it does that, the mycelium grows, does its thing, it gets shipped to us. So when we go through the farm, you'll see the blocks that we get shipped to us and what we do once we receive them and what happens in these events. So these are the white oyster mushrooms. So white oyster mushrooms are very, very popular with the customers. If I was to compare them to taste to the typical button mushroom, this would be the closest to that. So again, this is an oyster mushroom. The reason why they have the name oyster is not because they taste like oysters, but because they look like an oyster shell. So you can see here, I wanted to leave a few things in the tent here to show you. It's starting to get this sort of fluffy, rigidy edge there. And it looks like an oyster shell. So that's the reason why they have their name. They don't taste fishy at all. Very interesting thing about mushrooms, and this is the thing that blows me away as a horticulturalist, is they do the exact opposite as plants. these are actually closer to the animal kingdom than they are to the plant kingdom. Because what they do, and you can see the gills here underneath, they actually breathe in oxygen and they breathe out CO2, just like you and I do. Whereas plants don't do that, they do the opposite. So that's why we have to really make sure that the airflow in these tents is balanced, because if we don't balance the fresh air intake, the oxygen, there's so much CO2 that's given off in this room by this group of mushrooms that it will literally choke them out. It'll choke us out, actually.
Yeah.
So we did some testing just to see if we had no air circulation, what the actual CO2 levels would be. And it went from, regular, like 600, between 800 and 600, and we shut everything off, and it went up to 2,000 in less than a half an hour. So that's why we have to make sure. You can see we have fresh air coming in, but we have it coming into our humidification, and we have it circling around in the room, and then we have an exhaust. So we have a small exhaust that runs all the time, so that's sucking all the CO2 out. But if it gets too high, we have a special system on this fan that'll kick on wherever I set it, wherever I want the level. It'll suck it all out, and then it'll shut off. And it's just a constant, and it's nature. It's just producing nature. So with the white oyster mushrooms, they're very popular with the customers, but they're a very vigorous growing oyster mushroom.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they grow quickly, and they can basically go from not being ready to harvest, which is right here, and by the end of the day, this will most likely be this.
By the end of the day,
yeah. So you can almost see them grow. It's crazy, crazy cool. So with that being said, though, once it gets to a certain stage, like approximately this, they think, okay, I'm dying off, I need to recreate, and they start sporing. And we actually had all these racks out earlier this morning, and you could see the spore load in the air, just like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool, because you can actually, they're just puffs.
Is mushroom lung a thing? Like if you breathe too much of that, like you have to wear
we wear respirators all the time.
Yeah.
So if we're working in these rooms, we have respirators, and mushroom lung is a huge thing. Even though I'm protected, I'm here all the time, I have mushroom lung. If I didn't just have COVID, you would probably notice that I still sound like this. But we can only protect ourselves so much.
Right.
But it's crucial when you're working in a mushroom farm and in these grow rooms. Right now we're safe because we're in here just a short time. But it's really important to protect yourself because it can actually be very damaging. This is our humidification, and I won't lie, it's a DIY. You can see these on YouTube.
Yeah.
You get the tub, you get an ultrasonic that's inside. You might not be able to see it, but
I have one of these.
And it's a definite YouTube invention, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But we are actually putting on our big mushroom grower pants, and we're actually changing the humidification system to something really incredible, and it's called the heart system.
Okay.
And I'll actually show you what that's all about.
Cool.
And you see how bulky this is, you see how it's pumping out. The heart system is literally a nozzle, like that. And it's just what runs off a water line and an air compressor.
Okay.
So you won't have all this bulkiness in here.
You don't have to refill and everything like that. Yeah.
No, so it's just all run. And like we put bleach in these actually twice a week. And the reason why we do that is because you can actually get something called bacteria blotch on your mushrooms. If your air is not quite right, you can get that blotch. So helping work with the bleach in there. So on the new system, we're actually going to have a drip line, and it's just going to be all there. We don't have to do it manually anymore. So
exciting.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. So yeah, so these are the white. Everything grows at the same rate. These were all put in at the same time. And they don't all grow at the same time. So it's really hard when our sales team is saying, okay, how much are you going to grow this week? So it's just a kind of a shot in the dark sometimes, because it's not always guaranteed, as you can see here.
I know that feeling.
Yes, nature. All right, so harvesting is a very, very satisfying part of what we do. Everybody that I hire, when we get to the harvest stage, they go, oh, that's my favorite, because there's just something about it. It's literally, and again, very different from plants, no root system whatsoever. You literally just do this. And that's that. And that's how we harvest.
Amazing.
And you can see how it comes off the block there. And it's just that simple. And now once I've done this little area here is now called a scar. So that scar will never grow another mushroom. Not to say it won't grow one up here, because there's mycelium, but it won't grow in that little area there. So that's called a scar. So you can actually see, when I was talking about the grain and the grain spawn and using it as a vessel, you can actually see little bits of grain there. And again, that's what the original mushroom spawn was on, myceliated on, and then they were transferred to the substrate block and they grew from there. So that's quite beautiful.
Thank you.
So this is another tent, different type. You can see the humidity in here.
I love the humidity coming
Yes.
out.
So what we do is we mimic a forest in the fall. So these are what we call king oyster mushrooms. So king oyster mushrooms, you can see that the bags are open different. And the reason is because, again, we're mimicking nature, and king oysters grow from the ground up. They don't grow on that side of a tree where they would cluster. They grow from the ground up. They grow on the exact same substrate. We use the same thing with all of our mushrooms. And that's what we mimic. So the king oysters, again, it's a beauty, are quite popular. They're considered, the king oysters are purchased more for their stem, whereas the white oyster that I showed you is more so for the cap. This part is basically like a steak, so it's very meaty. I have barbecued it, I've smoked it, I've sauteed it, and all kinds of stuff. It's very, very meaty. It's delicious. You can still eat the cap. It's this part of it that people are after.
Okay.
You could actually cut it up into like little discs. It's like scallop. All kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff you can do with this. You can pull it, big pulled mushroom as such.
Oh yeah.
You can jerky it. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Jerkied mushroom, eh?
It's amazing.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And this gives you a really nice example of how they're growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this a finishing tent? This one's a little older, or?
Yeah. So basically, this room, they'll be ready to harvest for next week. So when I talk to you about the white oysters, about the pinning, these guys do the exact same thing. So you can see the little tiny baby pins there, those little caps.
Yeah.
Little tiny. They're actually really cute.
Yeah.
And king oysters take longer to grow than the white. They take close to 18 days actually. That's kind of where we're at. Where the whites are between 9 and 11.
Okay.
So there's a big difference. Every single room that we go in, except obviously the kings, there's different temperatures slightly, different humidity. They can handle different loads of CO2, so we control all those parameters with all of our mushrooms. Lionsmane is my baby.
Is it?
And the reason why is because it took me a good 6 months to figure out how to grow it.
No kidding.
They say it's actually one of the easier things to grow. Like when you buy kits, they'll say, oh, Lionsmane is one of the easiest. I totally disagree 100%, at least here anyway. So Lionsmane is extremely popular. You're gonna love this, Jesse. I love it so much I put in a window. I actually built this window myself, shockingly. Very, very popular. The best tasting mushroom, I believe, that we grow. And I literally made cream of mushroom soup just out of this type of mushroom. I've done it with all of them, but the second batch I did this one, and I almost didn't even have to add cream.
Wow.
It was so amazing.
Yeah.
So the reason why it's called lion's mane, and it doesn't look like a lion's mane typically, but there's a lot of different this is a species of a mushroom, but there's a lot of different varieties. Every single mushroom that we grow, there's hundreds of different varieties of them. So we happen to grow one that isn't as long in the hair, which is, it's actually not called hair, it's called teeth. But in nature, they can get really, really long, and they actually will look like a lion's mane, and that's why they got their name.
I have seen some of that. This
Mostly
seems to be the
nature.
more commonly cultivated.
It is, very much so.
Yeah.
And it's doing exceptional.
Yeah.
Exceptional.
I definitely tried some lion's mane, and it wasn't easy. So.
Yeah. We tried different ways of opening the bag. And I also want to kind of point out, as you can see, it's tipped on its side. Now the king oysters, and also just to remind, this is not an oyster mushroom. This is the only non-oyster that we grow. The other oysters are flipped up, they're all doing other thing. We tip these on the side like this because they do grow on the side of a tree, decaying wood and all that kind of stuff. So that's why they're tipped like that.
What is there a substrate difference from here to none?
Nothing. The only difference with lion's mane and the other is that lion's mane can tolerate a very high level of CO2, which you wonder what their respiratory system is based on the gills and all that with the oysters. They actually breathe through the front. So that's what their respiratory is. They breathe in oxygen, expel CO2, just the same as the others, but it's just the way that they do it. There's no stem. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
Love it.
So this I'm proud of because it was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
So lion's mane.
Different smell.
It's a very different smell, and the smell that it reminds me of Elmer's glue.
Oh yeah.
So lion's mane myceliates differently, and I'm going to get into a little bit of a snip on myceliation. It myceliates differently, it smells differently, and I think it smells a little bit like Elmer's glue. It's kind of weird. So again, super fun, super easy. That's how we do it. There's the lion's mane. Absolutely beautiful cluster.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So white on camera.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, yeah, everybody that works on the farm knows that this is my baby, and I'm very particular with the lion's mane. And you can see the different stages, actually. So this stage, kind of see, like they pin as well, more like a cauliflower.
Yeah.
They're very similar to cauliflower in the way of, if I was to, you can tell that I'm handling these a little bit different. They bruise, actually.
Okay.
They bruise very, very quickly. It does go away, but you do get a mark. But you can see cauliflower-like, looks like a brain, which is interesting because it's amazing for our brain. Goes through the different stages, gets a little bit more teeth on it, and so on. The oyster I've ever grown is 4 pounds. And for a lion's mane, that's saying something, because I can show you how light they actually are. This is how we receive our blocks, by the way. We receive them in this type of, we get them shipped once a week. Right now we're getting almost 900 blocks a week. So mycelium, when, use this as an example, even though it's myceliated. So before it myceliates, it looks more like this. So this is a lion's mane, and it myceliates different, quite clearly. This is an oyster mushroom, and this is not. So lion's mane myceliates differently, but I'm using this as an example because when it goes into the incubation room, it looks more like this, probably a little bit darker. And it literally takes 2 weeks to myceliate like that. And it's not only on the surface, it's on the inside as well. So it's extremely important. Mycelium, and this is incredible, they've actually done studies where if there's a plant that gives off, I don't mean plants, but like a working plant that gives off a lot of radiation, mycelium, if it's near it, it will actually go towards the radiation and absorb it, and the percentage drops, radiation in the area. Like it actually grows towards it.
Wow.
It's incredible. And in actually a cubic, I think it's a cubic foot, approximately a cubic foot, there's enough mycelium webbing to actually cover about 8 kilometers. So if you stretch that out in 1 cubic foot, it would cover 8 kilometers. So basically from here to Crossland.
Amazing.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Stamets has talked about some pretty interesting ways he uses mycelium to filter water on his property.
Exactly. So mycelium, it's used for water filtration. It's used for feed for cattle. You can actually make coffins out of it. They've done some stuff now where they're using mycelium to make textiles. So the lacing or the stitching in shoes can be made out of mycelium now. Actually, mycelium does something with plastic as well. So it's decreasing the amount of plastic in the earth. Like if you actually put that in there, it's actually helping with that as well. It's absolutely incredible. The webbing, like
the
you can
communication.
See it from, like they've actually done things where you can take a scan of a tree growing and you can see the root system. But the mycelium, that webbing is absolutely fascinating. So it's really, really cool. So that's mycelium, and it's aggressive. And basically we have this bag. This is the block. It has this small filter system. So mycelium can breathe. But what happens is we open the bag and we're introducing the oxygen, and it's like, okay, we're gonna grow. And something that I learned not that long ago, because when I had COVID, I did a lot of studying as well. If you spank the block, this is serious. If you spank the block when you're opening it up, you're saying to this block, oh my goodness, the tree is falling down. I'm gonna get action going. I'm gonna get active.
Wow.
So I couldn't even believe it. And we've been doing it just by, you take your block, you do this, you set it on the thing, you do whatever. We didn't realize we were spanking it, but I'm now teaching my team that if you actually do this, it actually triggers it, thinking that the tree's gonna fall down and I gotta get busy. It's really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So this room here is the last room. It's the biggest room that we have. This is our blue oysters. So blue oysters are very popular, actually blue and black. They're very popular just simply because of how gorgeous they are.
No kidding.
And again, this is a really good example of fruiting. I would say this is just beyond the pinning stage. Pinning would be more like this. They're fruiting, and then they get to a stage, these are almost ready, where the caps are starting to curl down, and they're at a stage where they're almost ready to harvest. Now this is an interesting, and I kind of kept these kind of going because this is what I mean about the mushrooms talking to you. So I can look at a mushroom block, like this one for example, and it also happens just naturally anyway, but it's telling me that, you know what, the air's not quite right. The stems are a little thick and the caps aren't quite as big as I want them to be. So I can look at this and say, okay, I'm going to increase my oxygen levels. I'm going to increase maybe lighting or humidity or something like that. So it's really cool. And when I say that we open the bags and introduce the oxygen, that we just mark an X in them. We just open them like that, and then they grow out of these. So it's really, really cool. And these blues are very quick growing as well. They grow fast.
So when would this one or these ones have been opened?
So we opened these ones on November the 18th. And my prediction is they should be ready around the 29th of November. And they're pretty close. Some are going to be done before that, but I base it on an average. So it just gives us an idea, so we know how much to put in for our sales team and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Just
so we are at a constant rotation for mushrooms.
So important. Hardest part, in my opinion.
It is actually the hardest part because you're dealing with nature no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they trick you and they say, you know what, I don't think I want to grow today. But generally, they're quite aggressive growers and they're a lot of fun. It's really important when you're growing mushrooms, if you're planning on cloning, because we've actually cloned some of our mushrooms. If I have one that I really, really love, I'll send it to our scientist in Strathmore and he'll clone it. And the way that you clone a mushroom is you actually open it up, like slide it open, and you're taking the meat out of the stem, and that's how you clone them. If I have mushrooms in a room, like I do right now, where I have blue and I have blacks, it's not ideal to clone them because they're actually, they're cross-sporing. Mm-hmm. So you won't get exactly what you want. If you want something different, then that's ideal. But yeah, so we're actually cloning mushrooms now. and doing trials with our own spawn. Nature is one of the coolest things, and with mushrooms, like again, a horticulture background, they don't really dive into mushrooms a lot, really, quite honestly. What I've learned about them and what they do for our world is just absolutely incredible. So I'm passionate about it. I get excited. I get depressed. It's almost like they're family members if they're not doing well. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So I don't want to do anything else. This is where I belong. So I really love it.
Well, there you have it, the WisEats Mushroom Farm Tour. Thanks again, Sherry, Jesse, Len, and the rest of the team there at WisEats. Really appreciate what you guys have done there. I'm super impressed. I watched that tour about 50 times, splicing it together. I had to cut out a lot of stuff that was really good. It was just in the essence of time. And what you've achieved there is really impressive, and I wish you the best of luck going forward. If you'd like to buy mushrooms from WisEats Farms, they're available throughout the city of Calgary, and if you're in High River or Turner Valley or Black Diamond, we offer them through our CSA program. If you made it this far in the video, thanks so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it, maybe learned a thing or two. If you did, consider giving us a like or subscribing, and we'll see you next time.